everybody. Wanted to thank you for joining this morning. My name is Matthew DeCurtis. I am our Vice President of Managed Operations over here at Anexinet. Certainly excited about being able to share some information about the advantages of teaming up with a managed service provider, as well as what it means to be the new breed, the next generation of managed service providers, and some of the services and features you should be looking for when encountering and actually going and starting your search. So I think we're ready to begin. Patty, do we have everybody logged in at this point? Okay, all right. Looks like we're good. Perfect. So if you find yourself here today and you've asked yourself, one of these questions, obviously you're in the right spot. So as you begin your journey and potential, desire to start to outsource to a managed service provider, some of the things, if you've asked yourself, I need to modernize my applications. I need better data to drive my analytics. I need to lower my costs while driving revenue. Applications and website obviously are important to your cost centers. I need to accelerate my go-to-market strategies. I want to sleep at night. I need to modernize my infrastructure. I'm worried about security and compliance, and I need to be able to move faster with more agility. So we've found, obviously, a lot of organizations reaching out to service providers and third parties to provide assistance to really help them navigate through some of the impacts that COVID-19 has had on the industry, on on-premise IT departments, and some of those are really tier ones and tier twos of just the general day-to-day blocking and tackling, the people that help keep the lights on. Some of these IT departments have been decimated, throughout this, throughout the pandemic. And what that means is a lot of these strategic thinkers that help drive revenue for the organization and drive technology for these organizations have been trying to obviously straddle the bar of remaining strategic for the organization, but at the same time helping to keep the lights on. So obviously, a lot of CFOs and the people that are writing the checks appreciate the operationalized model, but more so not having a capitalized expense and headcount. So how do we, help to alleviate that need where they may not necessarily want to add additional headcount, but they want to free up those strategic thinkers again to be help create and be strategic again for the organization, drive revenue through technology, being technology-led organization. So this is kind of our model, and what we feel and what I feel personally is the business of experience. We focus on helping organizations align these four very, very core and essential experiences to create one larger connected experience. So from business applications, the digital core, so the infrastructure and everything that your business runs on, tying it all together where data and analytics sit on top of it, to be able to provide you with the right insight and the right business intelligence to enable automation. So once we have these three foundational business applications, digital core, and data and analytics together, you can really start to formulate and extrapolate enablement and automation. This ties your entire ecosystem together through a connected experience, and that connected experience can be both externally for your users and your customers, or internally for your employees. So obviously we all know what a great experience online feels like when you go through, you complete a transaction. Usually the less clicks the better. How can we help enable that? And even so for IT departments, where can we introduce automation into IT departments to, potentially allow their troubleshooting techniques to be that much further improved? So meantime, the resolution is only enhanced at that point. Um, Taking a multidisciplinary, holistic team approach is essential when looking for a service provider. And certainly the next generation of service providers should check all of these boxes. So if you're considering going out to RFP to talk to service providers, and you want to start obviously going through and filtering out who's able to take care of kind of our entire stack, so from edge to cloud and the application and everything in between. There's the advise approach. So, we'll do an assessment or come in, help you build roadmaps, budgeting, that kind of stuff, help you align costs with your budget and keep those predictable. Designing the technologies that your core infrastructure and applications will run on. The sourcing, obviously, to evaluate future state planning, global strategic sourcing, and resource as a service. So, whether it's field services or actually, sourcing physical hardware, they should have somewhat of a VAR aspect to them to simplify invoicing. So obviously, it's a lot easier for finance departments that are cutting checks for invoices and POs if it's all coming from one organization. You're familiar with it. Usually it's pre-approved. But to aggregate those resources all into one is where we've seen a lot of alignment, especially when it comes to the enterprise. Enterprise organizations and businesses may have 300 different vendors that they work with. So you figure even just 2 or 3 invoices generated out of those 300 vendors, it could be 600 to 900 invoices coming through. And if you're a CIO, you're asking yourself the question, how can I reduce the amount of invoicing that I get, on a monthly basis? Because at the end of the day, all you do is find yourself signing invoices. And sometimes, obviously, the due diligence behind those can slip. But for the simplification behind it, if you can find yourself speaking with a service provider that is able to engineer and manage the rest of that process for you from like I said, from edge to cloud and application security, everything in between, you're talking to the right folks. So these are things to keep in mind, obviously. Optimizing operations. So other things to look out for, and the questions to kind of focus around, what does the NOC look like? What does the Security Operations Center look like? Monitoring and support, is it 24/7? Is that 24/7 just for critical infrastructure, or are they supporting our end users in a 24/7 fashion? And is it a gentleman or woman with a beeper under their pillow, or is there actually eyes on glass in that network operations center 24/7? And certainly, with the distributed workforce today and the way that COVID has enabled us to really work remotely and identify and understand these economies of scale, really, as we were all kind of forced, to become virtual. Distributed NOCs and security operations center are becoming the new norm. But it's certainly important to obviously have process and procedure written around that to ensure, obviously, consistency, which is most important in delivery. So how are they going to help you reduce operational costs and burden? We spoke about that before. So allowing organizations to not have to focus on adding headcount in order to get the day-to-day blocking and tackling done. Over 60% of IT budgets are spent, just keeping the lights on. So how can I operationalize that model to allow us to move forward as an organization with technology at our forefront, with my strategic thinkers that understand my business, but more so that can drive efficiency through technology and give me a competitive advantage over some of your competitors out there. Obviously, one of the most important things, what are they going to do to help you avoid downtime and degradation of performance? Whether that is, leveraging microservices, replatforming physical applications or applications that run on physical servers or virtual machines, leveraging microservices within AWS or Azure and Kubernetes. These are some of the neat things that we're doing today for a lot of organizations where, it's one thing to say my cloud strategy is to basically take my virtual machines and throw them up into the cloud. Well, you're not really seeing much cost saving there, and nor are you gathering any type of efficiencies. So, in order to really recognize, optimize, and scale your business accordingly, especially on demand, you want to start leveraging these containerizations, in the cloud. It's a pay per use kind of model. So, we have organizations today that they have busy seasons and they have, it's kind of off seasons. And during the busy seasons, traditionally, we would have to go through and, add horsepower either to virtual machines or add additional chassis in to prepare for these busy seasons to complete transactions. Whereas, in containers and microservices and segmentation in that regard, these spin up automatically. So from a scalability perspective, we're no longer doing that performance capacity planning for busy seasons, and you're not paying for all this additional overhead that you traditionally would in the past. So some of the things, I was out at a conference in Las Vegas, which is one of the largest managed service provider conferences out there, called Connect IT. And I was speaking to a lot of service providers, and kind of, racking their brains to see, what they were doing, how they were leveraging cloud adoption techniques. And it seems to be an area that's somewhat, I want to say, anemic in most regards to these service providers' capabilities of being able to, deliver cloud services. And a lot of these service providers' minds, cloud services, occupies and represents maybe, a virtual machine in Azure, but most importantly, their focus is in Office and Microsoft 365, and that's, leveraging Teams and SharePoint and that kind of stuff. But the real economies of scale and savings, where you want to align your technology to business goals and add value to your business, is when you start talking about, hey, here are traditional applications. Does it really need to run on a one-to-one server relationship, whether it be with a Microsoft operating system, or can we re-platform this and turn to a service provider that is now leveraging and using code as infrastructure, which is this great gray area today of where a lot of organizations, it's combining infrastructure with your app dev teams and code release and that kind of stuff. So it's really cutting edge technologies that we're excited to be able to help organizations realize some of these things, because a lot of it's so new that they can't wrap their head around it. But through through the guidance and consultative wings of these next generation new breed of MSPs, they can provide you with the technical prowess and insight to be able to make that transition from replatforming an application, something that's, more attainable, and easier said than done. So I like this slide a lot because it represents and helps to visualize what the three most foundational and critical pieces are to successful information that helps you make critical business decisions based off of, not only technology, but the information that your technology is receiving, whether that be from people that you have out in the field, manual entry, and that kind of stuff. But how do you parse through that data? So when we talk about the infrastructure, obviously, what your applications run on, the security behind it, where are my weak points, the chinks in the armor, am I able to respond to, or I have any insight into what's happening on my perimeter, or mass file changes internally within the networks, but more so compliance, and obviously everything else that represents endpoint security as well. And then you tie that together with your business applications, and you get those three, and they help to create the foundation of what you really need to tie together to have the proper information flowing into your data and analytics platform. So without one of these being in there, you're not going to get the full picture. And out of the infrastructure security business applications I mentioned a little bit earlier, the data and analytics piece only feeds data to some of the strategic thinkers within the organizations, to help look at where we can introduce efficiencies, automation, et cetera. So leveraging your infrastructure, aligning your business applications, create a security first approach, and generate customer business and insights. So tying these all together, all wrapped around with a secure project management office. PMPs are certainly very important to today. A lot of infrastructure managed service providers out there are a little anemic in the PMO area, but when you talk to organizations that have the full stack engagement, full stack management capabilities of, like I said, from the physical infrastructure all the way to the application development and deployment, you're really picking up, a lot of project management skills that have been, matured over years from an application delivery, code release, obviously going from, development into production. That entire software life cycle, as well as business life cycle, translates and transitions into more informed points of contacts during even just infrastructure projects. So the project management piece wrapping around all of this is certainly important to help keep all of your even all of your reporting aligned, but most importantly, keeping you informed along the way of progress. So that is one of the things that, in even just having conversations with a lot of CIOs and directors, it's they're picking up the phone and calling and asking for status updates when regularly scheduled updates should be recurring on a calendar through having a dedicated project manager that aggregates all of these different data points together to be able to report on them. And that's what helps create a better customer experience as well, more of a connected experience. So obviously arming you with the information that can answer questions to executives that are coming down to ask you, keeping you informed is most important along that way. So going to the next. So one of the key foundational elements to the new breed of MSPs, and they used to call them virtual CIOs, but a lot of days today it's service delivery management, especially some of the skills that go into it. It's not just virtual CIO skills, it's business alignment as well. Becoming a trusted advisor for an organization means multiple things. There's as a managed service provider, we focus on a long-term relationship, becoming an extension of your organization, and you want to look for providers that have that in mind, because that they're not trying to nickel and dime along the way. They are having your best interest in mind to make sure that, hey, if we're going to do a project for this organization, it's got to be done correct the first time, because when you have skin in the game from a managed service provider perspective, it should be turnkey, obviously on first go around and when it's go live, because that managed services department has to support that going forward. So there's a lot of like I said, there's skin in the game from both sides to ensure that these technology projects that may come out from a strategy and planning session, even cost analysis session. So when we look at life cycle refreshes, a technology assessment, technology roadmaps, but as we prepare to go through those, we, like I said, we want to make sure that there's a plan to go forward that at the time of turnover from, hey, this is brand new technology, we're going into steady state. Managed services is going to handle that moving forward. You've been working with the NOC and SOC team at this point, and they'll take that and run with it, because it behooves any other organization to not deliver turnkey at that point, because the organization has to support that moving forward. So it's in their best interest to really do so. But really, the relationship management piece, it's about transparency. It's bi-directional. This service delivery manager piece is critical, from what I feel, to the relationship, especially with organizations that haven't gone back to the office yet. It's critical to have great relationships with your points of contact, to know that everybody's swimming in the same direction. But having this collateral behind you, from the strategy and planning, cost analysis, technology assessments, and roadmaps, all the way through the projects, help these organizations feel like an extension of your organization. And if they can provide, white glove service for you guys and white label on top of it, um, that's even better. So, you get a dedicated telephone number, and they the network operations center or support desk picks up the phone as if you're, hey, this is XYZ company. That these are areas, that can only make that end user experience feel more connected to the rest of the organization, and not like you're using a third party at that point. I always say, the best form of flattery in this regard is, whether or not the engineers actually get an invite to the holiday party. So most people like hearing that, but that is a good judge of character, and certainly for us, lets us know that we've done our job when it comes to customer satisfaction. So helping organizations run smarter, just basic, out of the box. These are some of the things that managed service providers should do, and should do very, very well, as their core foundation. There's been, managed service providers been around for 20 to 25 years at this point, and these have always kind of been the constants, with the exception of virtual desktops coming into play, virtualization of servers, and Microsoft 365 cloud. So, but the knock, the server management, the network management, what's up, what's down, is a line flapping, has a firewall or router gone into a high availability state, is one of the primary carrier circuits failed over to a secondary line, and who's going to keep eyes on that to ensure that it fails back? Are they liaising on our behalf with those carriers and providers, or even OEMs to, order replacement equipment, hard drives, you name it? Do they have a good foundation, arms wrapped on our backup and disaster recovery plans? What other services are they able to ask? These are, excuse me, these are just foundational. They should just be able to do these very, very well. So here's an example, that we certainly wanted to talk to. So we were working with a large electronics superstore, major B2C entertainment product company with both e-commerce and brick and mortar presence. As COVID-19 crept in, certainly, I wouldn't say, probably 90% of their business transitioned to the e-commerce site, putting a lot of additional load on it. And they didn't necessarily have the microservices in place to be able to handle that load. So they had a disastrous event the previous Black Friday, and they wanted to ensure that, encroaching on the upcoming holiday season, do we have, a stable environment? Do we have the high availability in place? Do we have the elasticity in place to be able to handle these swings? So we redesigned their technology operations, focusing on that, availability and performance, all coupled with our 24/7 monitoring and management. And as a result, obviously the systems became highly available, stable, high performing. The elastic technologies with scalable compute obviously led for these web servers and hosting servers on the back end, to be able to scale accordingly, to be able to process these orders. And as a result, the organization was able to process kind of the most orders in company history. And that goes for, actually, at that point, they started opening up some of the showroom floors, and but primarily their business was, focused on the e-commerce and, competing with the Amazons and Best Buys out there. So exciting, obviously, to hear that from customers about, hey, they were in a bad spot, they had a problem, we came in, we identified, and we didn't have to do a lift and shift, scenario or solution. It was, let's put in something that isn't going to be disruptive to the organization right now, to create a higher performing system with higher availability. But more so, let's do so in a way that they feel we're partnering with them, and then continue to build out their roadmap moving forward, to really start to leverage some cloud technologies, and we'll get into that in a minute. From a managed application perspective, this is where you're either talking to an infrastructure managed service provider, or you're talking to a application development managed service provider. It's very rare that you have these organizations all under one roof and one umbrella. So obviously, proactive response to application performance, reliability, even the development piece of it. There are managed services platforms, Scrum as a service, that kind of stuff, that we're able to wrap around and provide versioning releases and minimal viable product based off of X, Y, and Z, and then some dot releases and then full version releases as well. So from an application customization perspective, there's the ability to build applications from scratch. Does that managed service provider have the ability to take a wireframe diagram, from design departments, from the customer, create an actual application from scratch. So take that from paper, from design, and actually start building it in a way that aligns with what the expectations were. Or do they have the ability to customize off the shelf software? So the Salesforce's, Oracle applications, you name it. And then certainly being able to monitor and manage and take care of your SharePoint and Teams. Some people are using SharePoint and Teams really just as a file repository today. They dump their file servers and they said, hey, you know what, we're just going to use SharePoint, as a file repository, and we'll get around to creating an intranet later. And that's perfectly fine and great. But we have the ability, obviously, to do all in one or one after another. So obviously, the removing the reliance for on-premise equipment, and what is their cloud strategy? What is their focus? When it comes to resiliency within their environments, are they making the recommendations to move you to a more highly available infrastructure or technology that may remove some of the need for on-premise compute? Ideally, focusing on how can we, in a perfect world, get you down to having a firewall, a switch, and wireless access points in your server room, collapsing all of that and being able to leverage, like I said, the cloud technologies in order to drive efficiencies within those environments. And then you start picking up tons of hidden expenses or costs to you at that point. You're able to realize a lot of savings when you realize you don't have to now pay for these environmentals, HVAC, electricity, and all that kind of stuff. Or these platforms used to draw a lot. So we have another example from a major US-based solar organization. They, out of the gates, they had an application and an idea for an application, and what they wanted it to do, how they wanted it to interact, and how they wanted their engineers to be able to interface with it. But most importantly, they wanted to drive data and analytics, coming out of all this. So basically, we came into this environment. They had one version, one flavor of this application, and we obviously they wanted to go into, hey, we're either going to go version 2.0 or we're going to completely rewrite this, because we're from what we originally intended on doing, or some of the key drivers behind it have changed, and we actually have a lot more scalability built into it, and we're growing a lot faster than we originally expected. So we came in, we re-platformed a lot of their just standard business applications, but at the same time, we worked to build their application in containers, in Kubernetes, leveraging these microservices to be able to, like I said, as they continue to grow, they add new grids. All of these services are able to grow kind of automatically, and whether that be through Terraform or the microservices or the additional ability to spin up databases on the back end automatically, it just further drives, kind of, you don't even have to think about it. We just add more and more and more and feed more data into it, and our infrastructure has the automation behind it in order to grow and orchestrate automatically. So what does that mean for them? So now we've helped them with automation in response to outages and grids. So as you can imagine, solar farms are fairly new from a power generation perspective and distribution, and being able to know what your production numbers are, how are you capturing that? Are we capturing it in an efficient manner? Or is there something physically wrong out, with the cable disconnects, or just if there's a disaster or an event where the power generation is dropped, we want to be able to report on that. And so what we do to obviously to ensure that there are no false positives, we leverage software that runs synthetic transactions for us to see if there's it runs through, like I said. So from a synthetic transaction, it pretends like it's an actual end user or user going through and clicking on individual things. It goes through and does that automatically for us. And if it gets hung up and breaches a certain threshold, it triggers an alert, throws it back to our network operations center. That could be, either during regular business hours or in the evening. And our 24/7 NOC handles those and hops in to start remediation efforts in that regard. So it's really neat from where they were, where they've come to, but at the same time, look, organizations want their employees to be informed. They want to have a proactive approach. They want their systems to be secure, and have your strategic thinkers focus on what's what do they do to drive revenue for the business. Keeping the lights on from a day-to-day perspective is not going to drive additional revenue for the business. It's going to enable them to keep revenue, but it's not going to generate any types of efficiencies in that regard. So financial teams should focus on actual investments versus IT issues. So and as a result, decrease customer incidents and reactive support. And we're really excited about that. So managed services and managed security and compliance. This is obviously huge today. So from our perspective and what we've seen a lot out there today, the only efficiencies that you're going to gain, and the only way that you're going to feel like you have some semblance of being protected, is by enlisting service providers that have SOC and SIM capabilities. Endpoint protection, endpoint detection and response, and XDR platforms are critical because we all know that a lot of our I want to say some of our the majority of our vulnerabilities today, come from end users. What are end users clicking on? Is it a phishing attempt? I saw some really creative things happen over this last holiday. Spoofed, text messages coming from AT&T or Best Buy and that kind of stuff to get, to get people in general to click on links, on the personal cell phones. But fortunately, from a corporate standpoint, we have some, a good spam mitigation, efforts, which help to filter that kind of stuff out. But from endpoint protection, EDR, and XDR, we're shifting into a climate and into a world where the traditional Nortons and McAfees and whatnot are no longer cutting it. And from web root and trend perspective, same deal there. Anything that's using really signature-based definitions or really signature-based definitions, the second that those definitions are released and downloaded to all those endpoints, bad actors and hackers have already figured out a way around it. So how do you take a kind of a proactive approach to that? Well, you start to look for organizations and software that leverage AI in their environments and in their endpoints, as well as server-based systems as well, that have the capabilities of being able to detect anomalistic activity. And I mean anomalistic activity by taking a baseline of how a machine typically behaves, and anything that's out of the norm there, it kind of throws the brakes on and hits pause automatically. If it's determined and deemed that it is a threat to the system, which it does, pretty much automatically for you in some of these advanced, next gen EPP and EDR platforms, it'll roll back automatically, and bam, you've mitigated pretty much what is the most disruptive thing to any organization today, which is a ransomware attack. So coupling all of that with IAM, vulnerability assessments, and ensuring that all your patching is up to date can only ensure success. But at the same time, insurance providers are rates are only going up today, and the only way to keep them down is to ensure that you're working with service providers out there today that offer these types of security roles and benefits. So we can talk about that later, and I forgot to mention, but at the end of this, we'll go through, and I've got a Q&A available for everybody. Um, so here's another case study. International utilities company, highly regulated, needs to focus on deploying resilient energy grids and not spend time focusing on their IT. So from our perspective, this is really neat. It used to be, the field technicians would, have a laptop and a hotspot, or just pad and paper writing things down, serial numbers and that kind of stuff. And we've been able to provide great end user experience through virtual desktop infrastructure. So basically streaming desktops to iPads, cell phones, workstations to secure data, because this is some highly protected data, where there's a big effort to secure the grid. But in doing so, we've centralized all of their servers, provided a secure remote field worker VDI. All the patch management, application performance, backup recovery, and security is all centralized into one data center, and no longer needs to rely on corporate carrier services or anything like that. So now it's in an enterprise class data center, and we're leveraging a lot of neat technologies to keep obviously the remote workforce secure, but at the same time making sure that from a compliance perspective, you don't have to hunt down 1,000 different workstations or laptops that have since gone off network, or have always been off network, but more so gives you the ability to have a centralized management database, or a CMDB, to keep track of all your corporate assets as well. So all these machines to check in and have agents on them, tie back into our systems, where we track all of that information for them. So as a result, peace of mind, ability to focus on innovation, and a better night's sleep. Pretty sure that's what we're all after. So managed data and analytics, I kind of went through this before. Obviously, the foundation of this is to ensure that the security piece, the infrastructure, and the applications are all feeding up and giving you the correct data into your managed data and analytics. More so, what are you looking for? Adverse events detection, social listening insights, market research insights, omni-channel and analytics, real-time social media monitoring, and data visualization. So you tie all of that together, you're able to see what's being said about the organization or your organization online. You can create a good persona based off of, hey, how do my customers, or how does the public view us, and if there are any events that are happening out there today, how can we get in front of it and be proactive instead of having to respond to something. And I'll go into this next one. So one of the largest food and beverage corporations in the United States, I'm sorry, in the world, leverage our services to identify themes and trends online. So they were going through a potential recall, and they were able to get out in front of it and create some brand loyalty perception. So what they were able to do is, prior to this recall, offer rebates and buy one get one frees and all this other kind of stuff to try and ease kind of the what could potentially be bad PR. But being able to adapt and prepare your PR department for types of events like this. Is there any potential negative information coming out, either through the media or for a news article or online, or through social media? How can we protect our organization's image? So having organizations that have the capability to be able to crawl all these social media sites, to be able to detect any type of negative perception that's happening across the board here, and be able to get in front of that in a proactive manner. So you're the smart people that are in PR can get in front of it and potentially put a different spin on it before somebody puts a spin on it for you in your organization. So the tracking and analysis of online discussion of key competitors as well. So our competitors trying to leverage a potential negative a negative aspect of our organization for their own personal gain, and how can we get in front of that? So obviously critical brand threats, recalls, activist campaigns, etc. So This was exciting for us because they actually ended up doing a lot of positive with it, and really from a recall, usually that is very, very disruptive to revenue streams, and obviously it's unexpected cost to the organization. But they were able to keep their revenue streams online. It really didn't do much to the organization when it came to their current revenue streams. Really were not affected, and brand loyalty was kept intact. So highly available systems and improved business continuity. These are just the benefits of working with a larger managed service provider in the next gen. Mature process and oversight. They're SLA driven. Small organizations now have access to enterprise tools. The economies of scale, as large managed service providers continue to grow. Obviously they're able to offer discounts. You're able to ride shotgun along with some of the, automation and enterprise class, customizations that have been made, whether it's in data centers or in cloud technologies. You can take advantage of those economies of scale and not feel like, oh gosh, only enterprises are able to afford this stuff. No, when you work with a provider that does it for enterprises, they're able to quickly tailor that to an SMB. So there's really unlimited expertise. That's one of the things that you should ask. What are the core competencies of the organization? Are they primarily focused on Microsoft? Are they an AWS shop? Or where does that lie? Or are they that true next gen managed service provider where they built their practice to encompass everything all under one umbrella, and then most importantly, helping them keep costs predictable. So we're delivering value for our clients. Every managed service provider out there today should do that. Repeatable model facilitates delivery of products. Modern solutions and a holistic end-to-end approach, like from the edge to cloud, application security, and everything in between. You want to make sure that hey, is this the right choice for the organization? Do I have the warm and fuzzy? Do they embody, do they embody the same core values that we value in our organization? And are they actually going to be a partner? Or are they going to treat us like a vendor or just any other customer? So important things to ask yourselves. Q&A. I guess this is the time that we can open it up for questions. Feel free, don't hold back. I know I can talk. I'm pretty passionate about this stuff, so I don't know if you guys were able to pick up on that, but for the most part, we're ready to rock. Hopefully this has been enlightening. Certainly, I think we're going to distribute this deck afterwards, but most importantly, this is really done to help educate. Whether it's forming a partnership with the Nexanet or going in another direction. These are things that are consistent across the board of what you should be asking any service provider that you intend on working with. So I want to thank you again for your time today, and I'll open it up for questions.
Matt, our first question is, what does the transition look like? We have both on-prem IT and an incumbent MSP.
Great question. So really, it depends on kind of what the objective is for the organization. Are we looking for a co-managed IT environment where we're going to aid and assist on-premise IT, and obviously an incumbent being in there is one specific function that they're performing. What is that function? Are they just handling tier 1 incidents, or are they providing security services, whatever it may be? But traditional, if we're coming in and taking over for an incumbent and still intend to work with on-prem IT, managed services is somewhat a technology world, to be honest with you, is somewhat small in general. For those of us that have been kind of running the loop for the past 25 years. It's a small world out there, and there's maybe 1 or 2 degrees of separation from anybody that works in technology, related to anybody else, especially with LinkedIn and social media. So it would behoove any other organization to not, really divulge and kind of make the transition from one service provider to the next a pleasant one, for 2 reasons. One, A transition, the grass, may look greener. Sometimes it isn't always. But you certainly want to be as cooperative as possible during that transition process, making sure that all the documentation that you've collected over the years or months, whatever it may be, is organized and delivered to the new service provider. So you make sure that you're asking the right questions to an incumbent. What types of documentation have you created over the last over our engagement, and then certainly you have to create a timeline. So what is onboarding going to look like? What does that really mean? So a transition. So the transition from the incumbent to the new provider coming in there. That's There's a lot that goes into it. So there's obviously passwords. There's documentation. There's just the overall a process that comes into play. But we've done this, I'm going to say thousands of times from a transitional perspective, and we work really well with service providers to make sure that we're not stepping on anybody's toes, and we want to make this enjoyable for the customer. We don't want to cause any type of disruption in there while we're unloading agents and reloading agents on the systems, and getting our security endpoint software onto those systems. So it depends on how large the organization is at that point, but a transition should be somewhat seamless. And what we have seen in the past, unfortunately we run into this with some smaller service providers when we come in to take over. They have a hard time seeing the forest through the trees, and sometimes they're very hands off and standoffish and don't really help us through the process, and that's evident to the customer, and unfortunately they end up burning a bridge at that point. So transition, we try and do it as fast as possible, with obviously as efficiently as possible, but also with minimal interruption. So every single customer is different. It all depends upon what services you're subscribing to.
That's all we have for today.
That's it.
That's it.
That's great. All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you again, everybody. Really, this has been a pleasure. Certainly super passionate about all of this, and would be more than happy to entertain any other questions that you have if you want to reach out afterwards. I know that our team will be reaching out to the attendees today, but most importantly, I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and hopefully has a great weekend coming up and great rest of the week. So thank you again.